Bullish. I've never been more bullish. I feel like we're at an inflection point. It's really just a matter of which quarter, how many quarters does it take before we put all the solutions in play. When the solutions, when the rails go in place, there's a huge amount of capital that will flow against a limited supply.
In this video, Bitcoin maximalist Michael Saylor goes over why he's never been more bullish on Bitcoin. Saylor explains that for the first time since Bitcoin's inception, there are 4 critical constructs in place. He leads with the fact that there's now institutional and retail interest in Bitcoin, evidenced by the amount of Bitcoin ETF fillings. He adds that several politicians have been extremely vocal about their support for Bitcoin, or at least recognizing it as a right. He moves on to explain that even the media have changed their tune, and at the very least respect Bitcoin now as opposed to the extreme distrust of Bitcoin as recently as 2 years ago. He believes all of these factors will fan the flame of demand, and since the supply is fixed, Bitcoin is primed for an explosion. Michael Saylor is confident that short-term and long-term Bitcoin can only go up from here. Let's jump right in.
I think that all the indicators are very auspicious. If we look at the situation we're in right now, I think there's never been more clarity or differentiation for Bitcoin as the dominant crypto asset than today. I think we've got pretty good clarity and universal consensus that Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer, that it's a global asset, that it is a non-sovereign store of value strategy for someone seeking to escape currency debasement. It's a point at which you have the most information to conclude that Bitcoin is a differentiated international asset, store of value, and digital commodity, and unique in the world and useful to the world. You have the most information to conclude that. And I think the fact that Larry Fink, running the world's largest asset manager, vocalized all those ideas on public television of late was a milestone for the space. I think the second milestone for the space is the groundswell of positive sentiment for Bitcoin, both in the form of overall crypto positivity and Bitcoin positivity. The statements by Ron DeSantis emphatically supporting your right to Bitcoin, the statements by Robert F. Kennedy emphatically supporting your right to Bitcoin, the disclosure that Kennedy actually purchased a bunch of Bitcoin for his children publicly is a big step forward. I think the fact you have 2 other presidential candidates, Mayor Suarez and Ramaswamy, also announcing support for Bitcoin, I think those are really big deals. So that, combined with the regulators endorsing it, the CFTC and the SEC, combined with the tone and treatment of mainstream media. If we look at the treatment of Bitcoin in the mainstream media, both across CNBC, Fox, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, the Times, and the like, I think you could see a market rotation of sentiment over the past 2 years, from one of incredulity and suspicion and fear and concern to respect. Either a grudging respect or this, or I guess this thing is more than we thought it was.
So far, Michael Saylor has discussed the current state of Bitcoin. He's especially expounded on his perception of the state through political and media lenses. All of these facts inform why he's bullish on Bitcoin. He's described all the seemingly independent gears that are turning and moving us toward the same direction, an explosion in price. Next, he breaks down the economics of how these events, which eventually culminate in an ETF, will cause Bitcoin price to explode.
Of the retail public and the ability of institutions and governments is still largely impaired to act on that. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult for a retiree with a pension fund to make an investment in Bitcoin. It's very difficult for a large corporation to invest in Bitcoin. It's difficult for a sovereign wealth fund. It's difficult for a government. It's difficult for a hedge fund. So you have all these challenges to action. You have all of these solutions in play. It's really just a matter of which quarter, how many quarters does it take before we put all the solutions in play. When the solutions, when the rails go, we have a large pool of capital that would love to be in the space, but they can't easily do it without things like Bitcoin securities or spot ETFs. And so that's going to be a big catalyst for demand. And we already know it's coming, and it hasn't come, which means it has not reflected itself fully in the price. Now, on the other side, we have two facts about supply. We know that there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. That's the overarching important first order fact. And the second order fact we have is that there's a halving coming that will cut the supply that the miners have available to sell in half, and that's nearly $5 billion a year worth of supply. And then we have a third order fact. The third order fact is, if large institutions can now comfortably own Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they're going to buy it and hold it forever, and the people that hold it now aren't going to want to sell it. So the supply available for sale from existing holders is going to decrease. The supply available for sale from miners is going to decrease. And yet the demand to purchase it will increase. And the duration, right? The amount of time that someone wants to hold this asset is going to increase.
Michael Saylor has explained how Bitcoin is inevitably placed for a massive explosion in price and adoption. He started by explaining that sentiment for Bitcoin has changed. He explains that retail, institutions, media within and outside the cryptocurrency space all agree that Bitcoin is an asset in its own class. It's not a security, and it's impossible to control. He believes this change in sentiment is only the beginning of many good things for BTC. Saylor believes that in a very short period, when the ETFs bridge the traditional world and the decentralized world, a flood of income is on its way to Bitcoin, and coupled with the fixed supply of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is inevitably going to erupt in price. How much of an effect do you think the ETFs will have? To see the latest in crypto news, watch this video here.